The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
How are you, sir?
This is Pierre.
Oh.
I can't believe I'm talking to you, Dr. Ray the Great.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I love listening to you. You have a personality just like my father.
I don't think you should feel helpless. You are helpless.
Doctor, I really appreciate that. That makes me feel a lot better.
You be at peace, or else I'm going to yell at you.
Trying to find a reason to speak to you. I think you're the best thing since sliced bread.
That Ray, he's something.
Thank you so much for what you're doing for all the parents out there.
I don't know what I can possibly do.
I don't either.
I'm getting my money worth, I think, at this phone call.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Nice to have you with me here on The Doctor Is In. I'm Ray Garendi. Program comes to you, good Lord, permitting, Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Okay, this is Look Back Friday. Previous calls edited to the capable hands of producer man Andrew Kruchek. And then, after we play those calls, I weigh in some more. Now, I could make it sound very altruistic, mature, by saying, I think I can be more helpful. I think there was something that needs clarity. I think there was an issue that should have been brought up that wasn't. I could say that. But I think it really comes down to I just want to talk more. Get down to the nitty-gritty of it. So for whatever the reason, we've got those calls in the queue, and we will deal with them after this opening monologue break. Remember Robert Louis Stevenson's story, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Dr. Jekyll was a very upstanding pillar of the community, viewed with admiration by everybody. And supposedly in his experimenting, he developed a potion that split his personality into two parts. And Mr. Hyde was this coarse, nasty, roaming the streets at night, ugly human being. Stevenson's message probably was there's those aspects in their grossest sense in all of our personalities. I'm not sure it's that extreme. Well, I know it's not that extreme. However, I have had many parents say to me in describing their child, it's like he's a Jekyll Hyde. He's got like a Jekyll Hyde personality. Sometimes he can just be really nice, easy to get along with and sweet. And other times, he just becomes so belligerent, so defiant. This is particularly pronounced with younger kids, elementary school age, who the teacher says, I just think he's the greatest kid in the world. It's a delight to have in class. Wish I had a whole class full of him. And the parents thinking, who are you talking about? I got the right school here. What's happening here? Who are you? Let me show you a picture of the kid. See if you recognize him. The parent does not understand this. Why is this so hard for us to wrap our head around? You know, Mr. Good Guy at work, everybody loves him. Kind of hard to get along with at home. And the sweet lady at church that everybody thinks levitates and prays the rosary in Aramaic is not so nice to her mother. Not at all. So which is it? Which is their real personality? Both are their real personalities. People expect personality to be consistent. You're going to act pretty much the same way across most situations with most people. If you're sweet and loving and charitable at church, you're going to be sweet and loving and charitable with your mother or your grown daughter. Why not? Because personality is really affected by the context that we're in. It's affected by the people we interact with. You know, that kid who's a delight in the class, but is a hellion for his parents. Something in the dynamic between the parent and the kid, or in the kid's view of the parents, is bringing out this ugly behavior in him. And something in his perception of the teacher and her authority, or his authority, or whatever it is regarding the school setting, is making him be cooperative. Do you not have people in your family, relatives, that you really don't relate well to at all? You have a very difficult time with them. But yet, one of your other relatives thinks they're great. Enjoys spending time with them. Thinks they're pretty much the nicest of all the relatives. How do you account for that? Because personality really isn't all that consistent. It varies from person to person, place to place, time to time. Ideally, personality, as it matures, as, say, for example, it becomes a closer follower of Christ, is more consistent. In other words, if I'm going to be sweet at church, I'm also going to be sweet with my mother. Why? Well, because I'm supposed to, because Christ wants me to, because it's the right thing to do. So I think it's safe to say that as you become closer to Christ, your personality becomes more consistent in its easygoingness, or its charity, or its kindness, or its getting along withness. If not, if Christ isn't part of your life and you're just sort of living according to the conditions as they present themselves, then you will respond according to whether you like the person or you don't like the person, or they're nice to be with or they're not nice to be with. We have this taciturn acknowledgement that people are going to behave sort of the same way because of who they are. Not really. This is extreme, for example, when you have, say, high-profile religious leaders who speak such holy-sounding words, or have a persona that appears absolutely so embracing of religious truth. And then you find out that they did what? No, how could that be? That's not who they are. Well, it's not who they are when they were preaching or on TV or on the radio, but it is who they are under the circumstances that they were in. That's how they reacted to them. And the struggle that people have to accept that there can be that dramatic difference in what appears to be someone's personality or holiness across settings bespeaks of the fact that we extrapolate from what we know about someone to the way they are always. Lady called his show once. She said, "You must be a wonderful father." Did I say thank you? I didn't. I said, "Thank you, but you can't know that. All you know is what you hear me say in a relatively very brief period of time in a radio studio talking. How that translates into the way I treat my kids or my wife, you can't know. Now, you hear what I say, and you think, therefore, that is who he is in real life. Well, I would hope so. But again, only my wife and kids would know that. So often, we get fooled because we think that someone is the way they are with us, and therefore they're that way with everybody or every place. It's like the parent who said, my son is incredibly defiant. He's just a defiant child. And yet, he's not at school. Or he's not with Grandpa. Or he's not with the football coach. So is he a defiant child, or is he defiant in certain circumstances with certain people? You recognize that aspect of personality, and you won't be quite so frustrated when there seems to be a little Jekyll Hyde going on. I'm Dr. Ray.
Today's programming on 990 WDEO is brought to you in part by a gift from our day sponsor. To my adult children, Joe and Mary Beth, wishing you an abundance of God's blessings on your birthday. With love and prayer, your mom.
You can be a day sponsor too. Just pick up the phone and call toll-free 1-877-288-1077 and say, I want to be a day sponsor.
The Heart of the Interior Life with Elizabeth Jingle.
In Rule 2 of St. Ignatius of Loyola's teaching on the discernment of spirits, he describes the characteristics of a person whose fundamental spiritual direction of their lives is directed towards God. He writes, in persons who are going on intensely purifying their sins and rising from good to better in the service of God our Lord. St. Ignatius is describing persons who love God intensely and want to live their lives in conformity to His will. These persons frequent the sacrament of reconciliation, sin is being uprooted, and virtue is flourishing. They are striving to grow in holiness and are giving more of their time to the service of the Lord. With attentive care to the spiritual life, the person portrayed in Rule 2 is the image of the growing and maturing Christian. Is there an area in your life that needs to rise from good to better? Grace awaits.
For more information, visit AveMariaRadio.net.
Remember to take a minute this week to thank a priest you know for all the blessings he shares through his vocation. Our priests work tirelessly to bring us the sacraments and help us on our journey to heaven. Let's encourage them and express our gratitude for all of their sacrifices, like thank you for baptizing our children. Nominate your priest at thankyouforyourpriesthood.com. A new contest every month through September 2025. Brought to you by Diocesan, your Catholic advertising and communications company.
Appreciate the company. Dr. Ray Guarendi, program Doctors In. Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time on the co-production of EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network and Ave Maria Radio Communications. The Global Catholic Network has 400 to 500 stations around the world, as well as EWTN's Sirius Satellite Channel 130. It's really kind of nice. And many, many, many ways you can hear the program through streaming and all of our networks, many of the independent stations. This Look Back Friday. Let me look at that clock here and see how I got. You got to juggle these calls on how long they are depending upon break to break. Let's go to Leah. Leah from Michigan, who does not have a good relationship with her brother. Now, keeping in mind my opening monologue, she probably has a good relationship with other family members, and so therefore her brother would look at her quite differently personality-wise than the other family members would.
Sure. I have a tumultuous relationship with my older brother, and there's substance abuse on his end. And many of us in the family feel like he's two people. At one moment he can be so friendly and kind and giving, and the other times he can just lash out for no reason at all and say some god-awful things that are so hurtful. And we recently went through a period of about a year without any of that flaring up, and I thought, oh, it's all behind me. I let my guard down. I warm up to him, and I think, okay, this isn't going to happen again. And it happened again. And I'm left feeling so hurt and devastated. And I'm trying to tell myself, even if I just keep it to news, sports, and weather, something so benign, he finds something to lash out at me about. And I just feel like I cannot be around him anymore. It's so painful to accept that my own brother and I have to have that kind of relationship. But I'm at a loss. I don't know what to do anymore.
Okay. Well, you said something interesting. You said he has a drug problem?
It's alcohol and marijuana.
Okay. So I'm going to assume that's in the context of maybe him not running his life so well?
Yeah, you could say that. He's functional. He's functional.
Okay, he's functional, but perhaps emotionally he's jagged-edged.
Yes.
Okay. Are you the only one he attacks like this?
No, our poor mother, 84-year-old mother.
Oh, he goes after an 84-year-old mom.
Yes, he does.
Now, you're not going to like, well, you may like, I don't know. You may not agree with what I'm saying. Leah, the fact that he pulls no punches with your mom should probably make him have less power to distress you. I mean, he does this to his mother.
Yeah.
And you said something really, really interesting. Now, think about this. He says it's so hurtful and so brutal, his verbiage, that you just simply cannot give him any more chances. I mean, he can be nice for 2 months, and then all of a sudden you point out that the Detroit Tigers really are not going to win the pennant this year, and he goes nuts.
Yes.
Why does that bother you so much?
Because I want so badly to have a close relationship. To
there
feel
it is.
Like, yeah.
There it is, my dear. There it is. The expectation you have for your brother to be different is far different than the reality. He's not.
Yeah.
He can be tolerable for periods, right?
Yes.
But you're wary. When's he going to erupt? This is just a volcano that's just simmering until he explodes, correct?
Yes.
Does he attack you personally? Does he say you're a complete lunatic, he wants no part of you, you're just a wench? Or does he just attack your viewpoints?
Both.
All right. Now, I'm going to assume something, that your Catholic faith means a lot to you.
Indeed.
Does it mean a lot to him?
Actually, he says it does, yeah.
Whoa! Now you just threw me a curveball, because I was getting ready to say it doesn't mean a lot to him. Well, then you got a real conflict here, because his Catholic faith would say he is not allowed to treat you this way. He's not allowed to treat anybody this way. So for whatever the reason, it's kind of like my opening monologue, which is, I agree with the Catholic Church. I don't agree with her all the time. And apparently he doesn't agree with her all the time when it says you have to treat your sister with respect and you have to honor your mother. Apparently he doesn't, at least from what you're saying. So 2 things we got going here. 1, his verbal barbs should really be losing potency. They should not have the power to hurt you, because he's done this for so long, it's got to be getting old. Rather than making you feel worse, it should make you feel less worse, because it's just like, what? More of the same? You're losing your power there, big boy.
Okay.
But see, as long as you say, I want to have a warm relationship with my brother, then every time he acts like this, it's a reminder that you don't. And that's really what hammers you.
It does.
I got ripped off. A sister is supposed to have a warm, loving relationship, a protective relationship with a brother, and I don't have one.
Yeah.
Well, but that's reality, my dear. It is. You didn't get to choose your brother, you know. You were kind of both born into the same household. If he were a friend, he wouldn't be a friend anymore, but he's a brother.
Yeah.
So if you want to have any kind of relationship with him, the first thing you got to do is quit demanding that he not be a jerk and recognize that you can have some kind of tolerable relationship with him, but when he goes crazy on you, you extricate yourself. Well, I got to go. Or, hey, you're getting carried away. Probably let's just leave. You don't have to sit there and get badgered, do you?
No.
Sure, of course not. She didn't sound all that old. Maybe somewhere between 30 and 45. If I can judge women's voices, which I can't. However, we don't know what he'd be like at 55. We don't know. And maybe that warm relationship that she would like would happen. But I know one thing for certain. It would not happen if she essentially said, I can't be around you anymore. Now, many people would say, and this is where I get in trouble, many people would say, she does not need to put herself in a position to be mistreated. Understood. But if she says, I want a relationship with my brother, but it's not warm, then she has to decide, what will I endure, and how will I not allow his jerky conduct to bug me so much? She says he can go periods of time where he seems like a quasi-brother, and then he erupts. Now, this could point to the fact that he's not happy in his own life. That could be. But if she's saying, I have a choice between either wanting a warm relationship or writing him off, well, there's a middle ground in there. Dr. Ray, why should she? Why should she seek the middle ground? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, he is her brother. So there certainly, I think, is a maybe bit of a moral obligation of trying to get along with him more than the lady down the street or the coworker you see once every 2 weeks. But on the other hand, she would like to have some kind of connection with him, and who knows where that connection will go in the future if she's not so bothered by the way it is now. Don't you have relatives in your life that, in a lot of respects, you feel like you tolerate them? You do. They're certainly not as pleasant or easy to get along with as you'd like them to be. But you tolerate it. Why? Because it's your husband's mother. Or it's your sister-in-law. Or your dad. You tolerate. You deal with it. And one of the best ways to deal with it is to truly not allow what they say to get to you. She didn't say this, but I could have asked her the things he says. So when she says he attacks her viewpoints, or he attacks her personally. The things he says, is there any merit to them? And I got a feeling she'd say, not really. No, he just fires from the hip and says nasty stuff. Then you don't have to give him credibility. And to be upset by them is not because they're true, which you should be more upset if they're true. Like the old saying, the old saying says, you want to upset me, tell a lie about me. You want to really upset me, tell the truth about me. But if they're ridiculous, she doesn't have to absorb them. People have ever asked me if I ever had any addictions. Younger, I had one. I was addicted to the hokey pokey, but then I turned myself around. Oh, come on. You're not paying for this. Let's go to anonymous dad calling about his stepson and his stepson's phone preoccupation.
I totally agree with what you said about, the anxiousness and all those things that the cell phones cause the kids. With my stepson, I have noticed those changes ever since he got it, and it just seems to get worse, and we have set a time limit that he can be on the internet or whatever, 2 hours, but we're always a lot more than that,
2 hours is a lot. What else does he do 2 hours worth? Does he do 2 hours of reading, 2 hours of playing outside, 2 hours of schoolwork? 2 hours?
I wish. I mean, he does go to school, so he's in school most of the day, but, he's sneaking it in, I'm sure, in classes and everything else, because he tells us.
So, wait a minute, he brings his phone to school?
Yeah.
Why do you allow that?
They allow that.
Why do you allow it?
Well, I don't want to have a battle with his mother and him either.
So his mother doesn't agree with that?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
She is pretty liberal when it comes to a lot of that, unless it's something serious. Like last night, I told her what happened. He was texting a girl that he knew from Christian school when he was in preschool, and as soon as Dad got home, me, the stepdad, he jets out, and I suspected right away, I knew what was going on, but I had to get dinner going and everything else, and he jetted out up to his room, and he continued talking to her, and he ended up falling asleep, but I knew what he was up to, so I told him, hey, your 2 hours are up, bud, and, he's, the anxiousness, I could see it in him because he's always picking his fingernails, around the cuticles.
How does your wife explain that? How does your wife explain what you see?
She says that I'm always overreacting, and that I'm always just nitpicking at things. And I just say, no, babe, I was not in agreement for him to get that phone until he was 16. I was totally against it.
Okay, her view, I'm going to cut you off here because I know there's a lot of details. Her view is you don't have any right to set these rules because you're not a biological parent.
Correct. In a sense, yes, but, here's the thing. His biological dad, passed away when he was just a baby. So I am the dad. I've been raising him since. So that is my son.
Okay, so
I look at it that way.
This is more a marital situation than a step-parent situation.
Yes.
How many other things do you disagree on besides the phone?
Television, video games, what kind of clothes he can wear.
Is she afraid that he'll resent her if she doesn't allow him to go along with the peer flow?
I think so, yes. That has a lot to do with it because that's how she is towards her older son. Lets him pretty much do what he wants.
And how's he doing?
Can't deal.
How's he doing these days?
He's doing a lot better. I really pray for them a lot. And at Eucharistic Adoration, I go quite often to that, and I dedicate a lot of time for them towards their well-being in their future and that they realize things, And
Ask her this. Will you overrule me if I have a discipline, expectation, or a standard that you disagree with? In other words, will this be something that you will not accept no matter what? If I say he can't bring his cell phone to school, will you say, absolutely not, he's going to bring it, and you have no say in the matter? Find out if she's that stalwart about this whole thing. Because if she is, then you're going to risk a marital problem. If she says, well, no, you should have a voice, then you ask her, what should my voice be then? If you don't want to keep the cell phone home, for example, from school, what do we do? Do we let him have it on Wednesdays at school? The other days we don't? Yeah, it sounds like very commonly just a whole lot of disagreements on the amount of worldliness. And you said something interesting, and I'm going to let you go because I'm past break. You said something interesting. You said you go to adoration and you pray hard. And I'm wondering if you're also on the same page regarding religion, and that would make a difference too, because that is oftentimes the underlying difference. One of my themes, and it came out in my first book, You're a Better Parent Than You Think. And I think that's the only reason that book got published, because I was essentially in my 20s, no previous publishing of any kind whatsoever. And it got picked up by a New York publisher, and I think because it touched a nerve. And that was that the experts, by and large, as a group, have made parents insecure, afraid, second-guessing, robbed them of authority. Now, there are still those parents who have authority, but more and more I'm seeing this kind of marital disagreements, which is, I think you're too strict, which is what it sounds like the wife is saying here. And even when the permissiveness leads to problems, it's explained in other ways. I see that in my office all the time. When parents come in and they disagree, and I'll say, well, what has happened as you've approached that? Well, he did this, 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 and this. Well, how do you explain that? And they've come up with some other explanation rather than the fact that I've allowed it, or I let him do it, or I've been loose, or I've been permissive, or I've been lax. Yes, I didn't ask. Maybe I did earlier in the call. I don't know. I didn't ask how old this boy was. But my guess is probably around 13, 14. That is where almost all kids have smartphones by now, which is interesting because the research is starting to gather momentum that this ain't good. This ain't good at all kinds of levels. I've been screaming this for 15 years, and finally more and more of my ilk and research is saying this is not good for their development, for their maturity, for their morality, for their worldliness, for their academics, for their social relationships. It's just not good all across the board. I don't know how he's going to get mom to agree with him. I really don't know, and this would be something you have to peel back in therapy and see where, in fact, they can agree. One thing that worked for my wife and I, and maybe if you find yourself in this situation, we had an understanding. The person with the stricter discipline rules. In other words, if she says no cell phone till 16 and I say, I think 14's okay, she rules. Dr. Ray, don't you think you can be too strict? My experience has been that the vast majority of parents are not at all too strict. Not by today's cultural standards. Not at all. So even the quote-unquote stricter parent isn't that strict. The parent, maybe I should say it this way. The parent with the higher standards rules. No burping the alphabet at the table. My wife would send him away. I thought it was kind of a boyish talent. She ruled. One of the more humble parents I dealt with in therapy, husband and his wife came in. They had two boys. One was 21, one was 14. They had these disagreements. The wife had much higher standards. The wife wanted to reasonably have limits and expectations. The husband's attitude was, hey, come on, they'll be fine. They're just boys. That's what's happening now. That's how the culture lives. This is what we should do. And they were coming in about the 14-year-old because the 21-year-old was making a shambles of his life. The dad said, I disagreed with my wife all along the way. I thought she was just unreasonable. Her standards were too high. And I got to admit, I did it my way over top of her. And I'm looking at my son, and I'm truly sad. And he said, I realized it was me. It was my approach. He said, I recognized that I thought I had the right ideas, but all I was doing was making things worse for my son. So, I'm here because whatever you tell me, I'm going to recognize that I need to relearn this whole thing. Kind of as an aside, the 14-year-old was getting very difficult too, because Dad was watching this repeat itself. And he thought, I don't want to go through this again. And the 14-year-old was very defiant, very defiant. He did not accept discipline or consequences. So at one point, this was many, many, many years ago, at one point I said, well, what do you think you should do when he just refuses to accept the consequences? She said, I don't know, I take privileges away. I said, what if you took them all away? What if you shut down everything? All his privileges, all his perks, everything, including even the kind of food you put in front of him, money supply, transportation, everything. Favorite sweatshirt. She said, whoa, that sounds like some kind of blackout. And I said, what a name. Said, do you mind if I use that? And so it became a part of a couple of my books. Blackout. Which I've suggested oftentimes to parents, just to get initial discipline cooperation. Okay? Don't take the regular consequence. Here's what I'm going to do otherwise. But the original comment was that this guy's humility in saying, I realized my permissiveness was just not the way to go. You can get away with being permissive if you just have a certain kind of kid. If you have a sweet-natured, kind of easy-going kid, which, by the way, is not the norm, but if you do have one like that, you can get away with it. People will say that. I had a lady call the show one time. She goes, I never had to discipline my daughter. I was very permissive, and she's a wonderful young woman. And I said, that's great. Very good for you. But you're not the norm. You're the exception. All right, I better get to a call here because I'm going to bump into a break. Let's go to Don from Ohio. We had this circumstance with our own adopted children.
I'm looking into adoption, and it's a long journey, but we've got to question. Some of the kids have such a sordid past. We're hoping to more separate them from that. And the basic question is about age. At what point do you think it's okay, better for them to even change their first name and try to break them apart from their past?
How old are the kids you're thinking?
Most of the ones we're seeing are closer to 10, but right now we're very open and we're talking to a few agencies, but it's taking some time to get their paperwork, through dealing with the government.
I would be real slow, reluctant to change a kid's name at age 10. I really would. I might approach it, if he has a middle name, say, which do you like better to be called? Your first name or your middle name? Oh, I like my middle name. Oh, okay. Would you want us to have that be your first name then? Give them a choice in it. Now, our daughter, we adopted at age 2. And her name was a very odd name. So we changed it. We changed it to Mary. But she was 2. I mean, she really had just an inkling of identity regarding her name. But you get up around 4, 5, 6, 7, pretty soon this is who these kids think they are, in terms of at least nominatively. And so if I'm going to do it, I'm going to ask them. You might say, you take it a step further there, Don. You could say, do you like your name a lot or not a lot? I don't like my name. Oh, would you like another name? Find out. I'd say about half the kids would say, I don't like my name. I didn't like the name Raymond. I didn't like it at all. If somebody would give me a chance, I would have changed it. But when my mom named me, I said to her, hey, Ma, why did you name me Raymond? And she said, because we couldn't spell blah. So, oh, well, that hurt.
At what age do they know they've been adopted, too? That would be a very similar related age, I would think.
Oh, that's way back.
You know what I mean?
That's back between 1 and 2.
Oh, really? So your 2-year-old is always where?
Well, she was in a foster placement, so she knew at some minimal level she had a mommy and a daddy now that were going to be her mommy and a daddy. She knew that. That's how we introduced ourselves. When we adopted our twins, they were 4, and there was an adjustment for them because they had lived with the foster parents for a couple of years. So when they came to us, they knew that something had changed. They may not have quite understood adoption per se, but they knew they were with a different mommy and a daddy in a different home. And then over time, of course, they adjusted, and they just viewed us as mom and dad, and the memory of the foster parents just faded away.
I'm partially concerned that in the child's future there will be that issue of, have you ever gone by another name? Well, yeah, but that's going to be the case no matter what.
Yeah.
The last name.
Yeah, pretty much. And I wouldn't make a big issue out of it. I got an adoption book. It's called Adoption, Should You, Could You, Then What? And we talk about these kinds of things. How much do you tell them about their history? What details you get into? When do you open up the adoption topic? All that stuff. But I think you're on safe ground, Don, to look at it as God gave you to us. You are our son. You are our daughter. And we will love you, and you will be with us. And I think the biggest thing is when you take in a foster kid, some of them have been bounced around all over the place. And they may be slow in getting comfortable that this one is going to stick. The other ones, for whatever the reason, didn't stick. One of the things that my wife and I did with the kids, and I've, read some of these adoption-type books that say, now emphasize how much you love them that they're adopted, emphasize their adoption day, have their adoption birthday. We didn't do that. You are our son. We love you. You came to us in a different way, but that has no effect on our family love and contact with you. None. Zero. Zip. Nada. Not even going to entertain it. And I remember going so far as I don't think we ever had any of our kids say, you're not my dad. Yeah, I take that back. We did have one daughter at age 13 because she had hooked up with a couple of other older adopted kids who were throwing that at their mother, and she decided, yeah, that's right. That's a good one. How about next time Mom disciplines me, I'm going to throw that at Mom. Well, that didn't go very far, I'll tell you that right now. There is no way she's going to say you're not my mom. She could think it. You can have that opinion, but it's not reality, and I'm not even going to try to convince you that it's not reality. You're our daughter. That's the way it is. So in a situation like his, a lot of it would depend upon the age of the child in whether you change the name. I think his core question also was if they've had kind of an identifiable history that wasn't too good and somehow their name became attached to that history, if you take the name away, it's going to mitigate the effect of that history? Nah. No, the history's much more powerful than their name attached to it. If you're going to change a name, maybe it's because the kid might say, yeah, I'd like to be called X. A couple of my kids wanted to be called X. I said, well, I'll call you Y. You're a boy, I'll call you Y. I'll call your sister X. But short of that, for the most part, I've seen adopted parents change kids' names. Interestingly enough, sometimes what happens, believe it or not, I've seen this happen. As the kids get older, into young adulthood, they drift back to their original name. I don't know. I can't explain it to you. Suppose I could if I talked to him. I'm Dr. Ray.
Did you hear anything? I thought it did. Don't like hearing noises.
The doctor will be with you in just a moment.
Hello, Rachel Herbeck here with Reno Ministries, and I'm so excited to introduce to you a new show that I'll be hosting called Burning Hearts. We're going to together daily dive into what the Holy Spirit is inspiring us with from the Word of God, really what's burning on our hearts. It's really simple. We're just going to be coming together every day to talk about what is God saying and what are we doing about it.
Burning Hearts with Rachel Herbeck, weekdays at 6:45 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. on Ave Maria Radio.
Food for the Journey, Sister Ann Shield.
Open your hearts to the way in which God wants to shepherd you. By daily prayer, you learn to hear His voice, and He will shepherd you, and then you're going to be in a position to help others draw near to the Good Shepherd. But we need to learn how to hear His voice, and part of the way we do that is by reading Scripture every day until we begin to see what God's priorities are, and we make those priorities our own. We repent from the ways and the times in which we just want to do our own will, and we truly more and more are converted that we want God's will, God's way, God's timing. And when the Good Shepherd really leads our lives, then we're in a position to hear His voice more because our lives are converted. They're shaped by His priorities. And so that enables us to hear the voice of truth much more clearly and the voice of love much more clearly. As we give up our selfishness, we are drawn into truly intimate union with Him. May God give you that grace.
Food for the Journey with Sister Ann Shields can be now heard on the audio archives page at AveMariaRadio.net.
When I was a little kid, one of my nicknames was Ramey. I don't know how I got it, but I got it. Ramey. And I remember I was asking my mom. I had a couple bucks on my dresser drawer. I said, Mom, did you see that money that I had? She said, I didn't take your dough, Ramey. I thought that was pretty quick on her part. All right, I'm looking back on the look back. It's a look back squared. And I want to just comment generally about this whole adoption thing. I've read all kinds of articles and books about adoption and how you're supposed to act as an adopted parent and all the things you're supposed to do. One of the more ridiculous things I heard, I forget who it was, I forget where it was, and she said, do not discipline an adopted child for the first 6 months that they're with you. Whoa! That's risky. You might be able to get away with it, but that's pretty risky. But one of the things I noticed was that many adoptive parents they're nervous, they're shaky, because they've been bombarded with all the ways that you could screw it up, because this is a distinctly different kind of parenting. Not really. Not really. This is parenthood. This is, I'm Dad. You're my son. You're my daughter. I love you. This is our family. This is how we do things. And that's 90-some% of it. Yeah, there are here and there that adoption questions come up. My kids had questions as they got older about various things, and sure, we answered them as best we could. Best we knew. A lot of stuff we didn't know. But underneath it all was the unspoken, unbroken understanding that you are my child, and I could not love you more than I do, no matter how you got here. And if that's the attitude You don't have to be so nervous and insecure about, well, did I say that right? Was that the right timing when I should have brought that up? Whoa, maybe I didn't answer that question exactly correctly. I'm not saying you just say whatever you want whenever you want. I'm simply saying that you got a lot of leeway in dealing with these situations as they come up. By the way, quickly, when my 13-year-old daughter wrote in a letter to her mother, "I don't have to listen to you, you're not my mother," my wife was incensed. She taped it to the cupboard. Our 17-year-old son came in, he saw it, and he laughed. He said, "Yeah, I remember thinking that. I just wasn't dumb enough to write it down." And both my wife and I just started laughing. And he took all the heat out of that particular episode. Well, I got to go. And I thank you so much for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. Good Lord permit, and I'll see you Monday. Walk with God. You are an adopted child of God's. You couldn't be any more close to Him.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.